Well, I wanted to talk a bit about your writing process with the time that we have left. So maybe this is a bad book to take as typical, but you say you at any given time you've got about 3 books that you're working on. So what does your writing day look like? Of those 3 projects, which one do you dive into, or do you do work a little bit on all 3 throughout the day?
Well, I tend to have one that I'm focusing on, and then one that that's so again that. So maybe I was slightly misleading there when I was saying I'm working on several at the same time. So several out in a year. So I'll go straight from one project onto the next, rather than literally writing them all at the same time. I just don't think I could do that. So I'll have one every day, one that I'm thinking about in the back of my mind, and then the one before that, the one after that will have, be kind of crammed together. But my this is this room here that we're in. It's the smallest room in our apartment. It used to be my daughter's bedroom, but when the whole kind of my wife got my study, I got the smallest room. So I don't really like working here, but when I can, I go to work in the British Library, which is the beautiful big library in London here, which feels like the kind of place where creative acts get done. So it's a wonderful place to work. So I try to almost in the sense of like going to an office, I try to go there most days, bring my computer, my packed lunch, and I work. And if I spend a day there, I'll write always a minimum of 1,000 words. And I feel that's kind of basically my day done. On good days, I might write 3,000. Bad days, sometimes nothing comes out, as you know. But so, yeah, I kind of avoided the question about process by talking about location. So for me, the most important thing is to get there in this almost neutral space with my computer open and make my fingers up, and then it kind of happens. That's a terrible description of writing, wasn't it?
Public space. Somebody probably recognizes you and says, "Oh, that's Tony." I should go talk to him. Last book. I love to read, and there's an author. So
I dream of being recognized. No, I'm not that kind. I've got quite a few friends that work in the British Library as well, so they recognize me most of the time. But I'm afraid I'm not quite J.K. Rowling. I'm not quite recognizable in that sense.
Good. Apparently, that kind of success can lead to monstrousness. So, and now I've alienated our British listeners. I apologize, J.K. Rowling. I've got my Harry Potter figurines right up here. I love Harry Potter.
All right, yes. I see.
Robert Gilbert's pretty good too.
What's pretty good too?
The book. I hear bad things. Maybe I'll get to it. Maybe I won't. The criticizing the internet. Oh, J.K. Rowling, what are you doing? But we were talking about you there in the library. You're working, so you pop in earbuds and block out the world, or do you want to hear people looking for and shop?
Sometimes, I mean, what I tend to do is I will have a burst of creativity that might take half an hour. Then I'll sit back and look at the world. So the beautiful thing about this library is it's a huge place. There's always something interesting to look at if you want to. It's full of kind of eccentric old researchers with cleaning their ears with tissue or blowing their nose and looking at it, or staggering around. So kind of quasi tramp like people, as well as kind of young people they're studying. So there's something to just divert the eye for a minute, and then you get back into the work again. So it tends to be that oscillation between the intense, frenzied. I type with 2 fingers. I never learned to touch type, pounding away, and then relaxing for a while, looking at the world. Spending a lot of time thinking about my packed lunch at lunchtime. So I go out in the courtyard, and you know how you get when you kind of get slightly bored when you're working sometimes, and so your lunch acquires a special importance to you. So that's a thing.
Sure. Maybe you got a bunch of words that day. Maybe you got none. But by God, lunch will happen at the appointed time. 2 fingers, huh? You said almost 40, 49, almost 50 books now. All the 2.
After I finish each book, I think, okay, I'm going to use the next little space, free time, to learn how to touch type, and I just never do. I think I'm too old now. It's also I make a terrible, really often people ask me to be quiet. I'm just typing too loudly with my 2 fingers. But it would much better. Are you a proper touch typist?
I mean, yeah.
Yeah, it's insane. It's almost, I reckon, my top tip for writers. Learn to touch type. Your life will be so much easier.
I had to think for a moment there. Do I want to hold myself up as a hallmark of great typing? No, but can I do it? Yes.
At least I mean, so
you've got to be faster with two fingers.
This is a slightly boring point there, but so when you're touch typing, you're looking at the screen, so you're seeing the words emerge. Whereas I'm just looking at my keyboard. So often I'll you look up and suddenly you find you've had the caps lock on, and so you got to get rid of it. It's all in capitals, or just you've written gibberish. Autocorrect has changed it to something that you didn't really want. So it's just a laborious thing then to go back and have to edit your poor typing. So yeah, learn to touch type, guys. That's what I would recommend. And you know what? I'm gonna learn. I'm gonna learn. If you talk to me in a year about my next book, I promise I will have learned to touch type. Are you happy now?
No, I'm not. You're gonna sit down and you're not gonna be able to write a word. I will have disrupted your entire process. Don't do it. This is working. No, I frequently joke on the show, as soon as I have two successful authors telling me we do the exact same thing, the same way every time, and we're always successful, I'm throwing out everything I do and I'm doing that. But it hasn't happened yet. So this is this is your way to be successful. So does that have you tried writing by hand? Does that speed the process?
No, I just don't think I've got the motor skills anymore. Occasionally I'll do events where I'm going to sign 50 books or so. And at the end of that, my whole arm swells up. I couldn't write a book with a pen these days. I don't know any writers of my generation that use a pen and paper anymore. I don't think. I don't even make. Well, occasionally I've got a little notebook, but even notes, I tend to use a computer. But so I was kind of pondering just as I was talking there, my process. I'm trying to work out what it is. I suppose what normally happens with most of my books is that I get a little flash. So with Hellbent, just a little idea was teenage boy dies and goes to hell. And then the book is, and everything I need is contained in that seed. And just the writing is just essentially expanding on that initial idea, and that's all I need. And it's basically then just a matter of me literally starting the beginning and typing out that story. Or my absolute favorite book that I wrote a book called Hello Darkness, which is about a teenage boys at school where they have animals, like school pets, and the school pets are being murdered one by one. And my narrator Johnny is always around when the school pets are being murdered. So he's got to find out, he gets the blame for it. He's got to find out who's really killing the school pets. And about halfway through the story, you realize that he's stopped taking his medication. So he's got quite severe mental illness. And from that point on, you don't quite know what's really happening in the school and what's happening in his imagination. And so it's a pastiche of noir fiction. But also a story about mental illness. And so there again, the initial seed was just this, almost a line in my head. He stopped taking his medication. And then the rest of the story kind of fell into place around that. So that's my normal process, is that little idea that somehow has within it both the characters and the world and the plot. And writing is just, after that, almost dictation for me.